Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is episode I think it's 196. Is it? It is, folks. 196. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about a candidate. But before we get into that, let me introduce our co-host for the night, Buddy the Lumberjack.
Yeah?
And we don't have a nickname for him, but we'll call him the mathematician of the Yang Gang. How are you tonight, sir?
Yeah, I like that nickname.
It's not as cool as Buddy. It doesn't fit you quite as well, but I think maybe it might stick. I don't know. Every time I've seen you on camera for the last 2 months, it's been with a math hat. And like, I'm not even 100% sold on Yang yet, but I'm not going to say and not going to lie and say that hat's pretty dope.
You wait till we got some more fly merch coming out too. We're going to make some winter gloves soon.
Winter gloves.
I feel ignorant as hell sitting here because I've been seeing you wear this hat, and I'm like, yay, math is great. And I'm like, wait, there's a reason he's wearing that. What the hell is the reason anyways?
It's a moniker for Make America Think Harder instead of the MAGA hat.
Oh, that's pretty good. I just thought it was because he had a lot of statistics, and that was his thing. So I honestly did not know that.
It's a double entendre.
Huh.
You know.
That's pretty cool, though. I will admit that is actually pretty awesome. But so it's kind of funny because here we are, we're doing a live stream again, which is crazy. We're attempting this.
Once again,
we're attempting this. Hopefully, because I'm at home this week, all of the audio will be a little bit better, and we will have less issues.
Not dropping your signal.
Yeah, not dropping the signal because of the hotel.
Fingers crossed.
Well, and to speak on that, I actually figured out what it was. The issue that I was having is the hotel has free Wi-Fi, does all these other things. And what happens is with this Wi-Fi, we will get we'll get like a connection and it'll remember my browser. And what'll happen is I don't know how to clear it very well. So I can't clear the password, and if their password changes, for whatever reason, it works for like a couple hours, and then it kills it, just randomly. No idea why, just know that it does that.
That's because it hates you.
Probably. That's probably why.
Oh shit, that's too close.
Yeah, hey, we're getting nice and cozy, buddy.
You can see all my grays.
You can. Yeah,
nice.
And that's the other thing you'll notice. I shaved my beard down. Don't know why. I did. It was kind of bothering me. So I was like, man, I'm going to start from scratch. It's one of those things where I didn't grow underneath it out. And then I started to later on. And so because I didn't do that, it was very uneven. And so I was just like, screw it. Easier to start over. Yeah.
And then there's people like me who can't grow facial hair to save their lives.
That's very true.
It's okay.
Anyway. So I thought tonight we would start out by talking about a recent development that happened at the end of last week. There was an official announcement for recreational marijuana being able to be sold in Michigan. And they're starting it well ahead of the time that they originally agreed to. They're starting it December 1st. And so right now it's middle of November. So in less than 3 weeks, dispensaries will be able to start selling recreational weed if they were actually given, or purchased the license.
So what you're saying is that you're going to have a green Christmas this year?
No, probably not. But there is a lot of other people
this
that
isn't about
will.
global warming.
All right. Well, there's a lot of other people that will. have a special Christmas. But the funny thing was, my friend messaged me. They're like, "Hey, does anybody know where these are? You know, like who got licenses? Like, there's been no advertisement, nothing." And so, like, I don't know how much business is really going to come out of that personally. But again, you never know. But it's kind of, to me, it kind of feels like weird because I don't think that we're going to get a ton of business, you know, that starts on that.
Well, I'm actually going to reach out to my local dispensary here in Bangor, Michigan. It's called The Green Door. I did an interview with him a little over a year ago. No, it's just under a year. I think it's on 12/12. Rutro.
Yeah. It was on 12.
Oh, you changed the screen. Sorry, just freaked me out, man. But yeah, I interviewed him last year, and that's just after Michigan approved the medical or the recreational law. And so I'll check back with him, see if he has a list of people that I can share that say, hey, this is the ones that do or don't have the licensing. He's in contact with most of them, I'm sure of it. So I might do a little research on it myself.
Yeah. And that's
I can't touch it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty cool.
Right? We did that across Canada on October 17th of 2018, 3 days before I got married, which, I mean, where we were staying happened to be a block away from a dispensary that had just opened. But the day that our dispensaries opened, like most of them, as far as I heard, basically all ended up going dry within a couple hours because people would line up just to get in and enjoy their wares. But we're actually currently working on, from what I understand, legislation involving like the edible sale of marijuana, because there's some gray areas that they've put in with that. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, my mom's a really good baker. Let's see what kind of recipes she can supply me with, and see if we can, can't make some money off of this. Because once that goes into effect, I mean, then it's going to open up an even greater opportunity for business, really. And I think it's great for the economy. Mm-hmm. But what's really been interesting about it is, in Canada anyways, is that cities have been allowed to pass their own bylaws specifying, where dispensaries can be, what they're not allowed to be near, basic business license shenanigans. However, in British Columbia, which is kind of like it has the reputation for being the pot smoking central of Canada, they have some of the most inconvenient bylaws passing where their dispensaries can be. So I guess in Vancouver there is not many, and there are not many, and they are not easy to get to, which is kind of hilarious given that they have that reputation for being the hippies. Yeah.
Well, in Michigan, you can't get the recreational license to sell unless you have the medical license first.
Oh, that's good to know.
Interesting.
As of right now. So they gave them a full year to process the medical marijuana dispensaries. Like they had this backlog for a year. That's why it took so long. So now they're ahead of schedule. They must have hired some more folks, but they got through all those applications and approvals. So now you can get the recreational sale because you've already passed all the inspections. And so then they're going to allow that on December 1st. Then people can reapply to start a new business, but they'll be put on a wait list to get what do you call it? They'll be putting on a wait list to get their inspections done next so they can open their business.
Huh.
Yeah, I did cool. I did a little research on this one.
I mean, there's going to be great money that goes into it. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a bit of a crapshoot as the market, opens up at first, and then the floodgates and everybody's pouring in, and then it'll eventually, kind of narrow down. And I think we're probably going to end up seeing some big corporations that end up getting a good market. I mean, I know in Calgary, in Alberta, we have Co-op, which is a grocery store chain that's local to our city, province, I think. And they actually opened up their own cannabis dispensaries, which was pretty awesome because they also have like a little club membership thing where you get money back at the end of the year if you spend so much. And I'm like, well, this is also going towards my gas. So cool. We're going to save some money on weed. Great. Economical. Be a smarter stoner, kids.
Yeah.
That's
so
what we're saying.
I think one of the things too that we have to talk about a little bit is what happens with these, dispensaries to the medical side of it. Do you did it affect it in Canada? I mean, there are people that depend on, and whether we want to call it medicine or not, it is inconsequential, but we did have people that depended on that stuff before.
Right. That actually, I wish I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I might have actually looked into it. I know we had, like, you could get your, what we called a green card, which basically allowed you to go get, yeah, I know, Canada. Aren't we hilarious? Where you could go to specific clinics and they would, kind of assess whether or not you would get one. Now, from what I understand, the doctors were pretty liberal with the way they would disperse it, but they would just, as long as they could justify and write down enough medical reasons. Like a friend of mine who went and got his, he goes, I'm a power lifter, so at the end of the day, sometimes my joints are a little sore and the CBD kind of reduces inflammation, blah, blah, blah. The doctor's like, cool, this will help you sleep. And that was it, right? And I mean, we do know that CBD does have some beneficial, some pain relief and whatnot. So I think medically speaking, it was a phenomenal thing to just kind of release and let loose, because at least people who did benefit from it could do so without fear of any sort of legal repercussions. Now, I can't remember exactly when the medicinal marijuana came in and became more of a thing in Canada. That's kind of really only been talking the last couple of years, but yeah.
Yeah, because that was one of the concerns, I think, that we had. I guess I didn't have that concern because I never thought of it. But somebody in one of the articles actually mentioned that was a big concern, for them, that those dispensaries could be blood dry. Again, I've not heard which ones are going to be open. I have no idea where that's going. I just know that, people have brought that as a big concern over the course of the last week or so.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll give them priority if you have a medical card, that you get maybe priority purchase power or something. Maybe, I'm not sure, but it's silly market wise to give preference if you're just trying to sell your shit. You don't care who buys it. So I wonder if that's something they're considering. Like I said, I'm gonna go talk to that guy probably this weekend and go see what he says. Get more information on that.
Well, awesome. Well, anyway, I thought we'd do a quick update. We don't have to spend too much time on it, honestly. I don't think it's that important, but I just thought it was kind of funny because all of a sudden that came out, and now people are asking where is that's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and all that fancy math.
Yes.
Oh,
the bridge.
There we go. So the one thing I want to do, and last year I think Hannah and I, and we'll get to Hannah in a second, but one of the things that last year we did was we took some segments where we interviewed local politics before the election time, right? And we actually got the politics on the show, people or politicians on the show that were running in our local area. Now, I don't have any hopes of our show being able to obtain any of the Democratic candidates per se on the show. It would be amazing if they did that, but I'm not going to give up a bunch of hopes for it. What I will say, though, is that I think it's a benefit to analyze the policies of each of the candidates. And so I wanted to create a segment where we had that conversation. And I only say that because what if we didn't look at that? What if nobody stops and takes the time to look at it? Where are we at? What do we do? And I just think that it's a sad state that we're in if we do not properly analyze this and look at everybody that's out there. And I'll say this, because Andrew Yang has kind of come up a lot. He's made it into the next debate rounds, right? He's one of the candidates that's kind of come out of the woodwork from nowhere. And people are like, hey, what's going on here? And a lot of people are dismissing him. So I thought, anyway, the idea behind this segment, and I don't have intro music for it, but the idea behind the segment is we would actually, examine each one of the candidates each week for the next, for the next month and a half to kind of talk through what they stand for and if they even have any actual laid out policies that we can read. So this week, we get to do Andrew Yang.
I need it to be a drum roll there.
I can play you some intro music if you need it.
You can play me some intro music. Is that what you want? You want some intro music for this?
I'm just
get the presidential.
I don't think you're Andrew Yang, but
no. It's not that. It's actual a song made for Andrew Yang, like his intro song. Sometimes for the videos, it's like a hip hop song they did. It's pretty interesting.
I was going to say, please tell me it's Saliva.
Well,
Nope.
if you would like to cue it
Ladies
up,
and gentlemen.
if you would like to cue it up, my friend,
Okay, let me see.
we can play it for in a little bit. So I guess for me, and you know, buddy, I know this is American politics again, but I think it's important because you have an outside perspective that you could say, hey, look, you know, this is I agree with this, or I don't agree with this, or this seems silly, or we've already done this before, you know, those type of things.
Oh, I am down.
Awesome. So
I'm sorry, was I supposed to mention my pants being down and like the Vaseline being ready at hand or
Nope.
something? Or?
no,
Whoa.
Oh,
nope, we're live on
right,
Facebook.
we're live on
We
Facebook.
can't,
Never mind.
Don't want to hear about
Never
that.
mind.
Yep. Do not get me
Who
banned
was
from
talking about
Facebook.
that?
All right. So the reason we chose Yang to start with, A, is because Boyce has some intimate knowledge. We get to keep Boyce
Oh.
and have this
Nice.
conversation
Come on.
about it. But we also get to look at, you know, you're going to get a perspective of somebody like me I'm not for him as an individual at this current time, but I find him intriguing. So Boyce, tell us a little bit about your boy, Andrew Yang.
Well, I guess the flagship policies he touts is first and foremost human-centered capitalism, where he wants to say, okay, we need to find a way to make this free market work for us and not us work for the market. And the premise of that is the freedom dividend, which is universal basic income of $1,000 a month. No questions asked. Everyone from the president down to the poorest person that's homeless. Not taxable either. So that is part of the base policy for him. And the other one is Medicare for all with a public option, with hopes of making Medicare so competitive. The idea is to make Congress want Medicare to be so competitive that it outcompetes the free market and helps control costs. And so if Medicare is better than your private insurance, you're not going to take your private insurance, and then you'll take Medicare, and that'll make the free market like Blue Cross and Blue Shield have to compete and bring their prices down and their benefits up to match Medicare and compete with them, or they go out of business, and then it's just Medicare for all, single payer eventually. You know, that's why he said he likes the spirit of Medicare for all, single payer, like Bernie says, but he just says the better way to get there is using the free market to push them out or make them compete.
So do you know, does he actually have a policy?
Yeah, several on that. And he's actually going to release a new updated one where he talks about how do you pay for that and how's it going to look. He's actually working on that here. I think he's going to release that after the debates, or maybe even the day of or day before the debates, to maybe get him some more screen time at the debates. But he's going to release a very, very detailed Medicare for all with a public option. I think he might even be rebranding it, not calling it Medicare for all, because all the Bernie supporters and like the TYT and all the other mainstream online, not mainstream media, but the mainstream online secular talk and all those guys, Kyle Kalinske, they're like, he shouldn't call it Medicare for all. He's what do you call that? Like, you know, he's taking the label, but not the policy. And so I think he's going to rebrand it when he does that. But yeah, he's got a very detailed policy on that. You can even look it up if you want. You can pull it up if you want to show.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
it's very, very lengthy.
Yeah. Where is that policy? Because his website does not have a very lengthy policy.
On Medicare for all?
Yeah.
Okay. I can pull that up for you.
Awesome.
Nice and easy. So yeah, you just go to his main website, you go to policies, and you scroll down to Medicare for all. And it's a pretty. Well, the thing is, on his website too, it's a lot of excerpts from the book he wrote about Medicare.
Was this it
for
right
all.
here?
Are you screen sharing? Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the.
So-
So this is his broad strokes approach to it, but then he's releasing a very, very detailed one. It's probably gonna be long. So his climate change one was like 33 pages.
Yeah.
So he's gonna do the same thing with Medicare for all.
All right. And see, and that's where I was a little concerned when you say, hey, we've got, you know, this big detailed policy. And a couple of weeks ago, we reviewed, you know, Elizabeth Warren's.
Mm-hmm.
This is nothing like Elizabeth Warren's. So, and I don't mean to be picky, but, you know, I am going to be a little picky, you know.
No, I think that's why he's been criticized for that, not having enough details in the actual policy itself. And so he's like, okay, let me because he took climate change as his primary one. He made the biggest jump in on that first, and now he's going to go to Medicare for all and make it significantly more detailed.
All right,
but it does give a broad strokes on here on this.
So that's fine. Let's go into it a little bit because I disagree a little bit already just with your definition and him. So why does he feel that leaving the market open will allow it to be competitive?
Well, an open market is competitive. First of all, you know what I mean? Like it just is.
Yes, and it's not. We have an open market now, and it's not competitive.
Right, because they have a closed system where they're competing with each other. Like they get to determine the price and the shitty coverage and the lack of like the whole policy where they're all in cahoots. Like they'll say, okay, well, an MRI is worth $1,600 at this hospital, but it's only $1,200 at this hospital because of A, B, or C. I have no idea, but they do have their fixed prices where they're all kind of not really competing all that well because it's it's not, the free market isn't working in this current context because they're all they get to control who their competition is really. It's only a few, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, and I can't think of any others really. ASR.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. United Healthcare. Yeah. Right. There's United Healthcare is a big one. Mm-hmm. I think, again, I don't know all the system. Yeah. I think there's a good 10 to 12 of them. Honestly.
That's what I was going to guess, about a dozen.
Yeah.
Right. But he's saying he wants to have the government make one so competitive with sheer numbers that it will decrease the cost to get in and be way more competitive. And the government can lobby, or what do you call it? Like, flex on the medical, the prescription drug price, say, listen, we're not going to pay that. That's just not happening. So,
yeah.
So, that's a big one for me.
Yeah. And see, that's what I want. That's what I want to get into, right? Because when you say, "Hey, we have a free," the free market naturally drives down prices. That's very limited in its scope, man.
Yes,
like we don't have that. You don't have that in the automobile market. You don't have that in the food market per se. That's not how things work all the time in capitalism. Again, if you can sell a cell phone for a lot cheaper and still be able to make money. If you can offer the same quality as an iPhone at $500 versus $1,000, people would buy that. But look at all the other top cell phones. Name one top cell phone that's not within $200 of an iPhone.
No, they're not. They're going to make as much as they can.
Yes, and this is where I say, hey, hold on a second, because you want to open up the healthcare system, then tell the government, hey, we're going to provide healthcare to everybody, so everybody's on it. But we can get cell phones from everywhere, and it's not driving down the costs. Mm-hmm. And that's my problem.
Yeah, the market isn't working. But what he's saying is that Medicare for all, the bottom line is we want everyone covered. First and foremost, it's a right. We should have it. Everyone should be covered. And he's saying that everyone will be covered, but people like myself who have a employer provided one, or maybe if you work in a union shop where that's part of your contract is you negotiated for that, and that's part of your package deal, don't take that away. But what I think is going to happen the next time the union negotiates or the next company comes along and says, hey, it's cheaper for us to just not offer health care. Well, everybody's just going to go on Medicare. It makes sense for them. I would do that. Why have that variable that's always going up? Healthcare just goes up and up and up. It doesn't fluctuate with the market. So he's saying let's take that off the employers' backs and let them focus on their. They can compensate people financially with a higher pay if they don't have to worry about health insurance. But you will have higher taxes too to cover. So it's going to be a little give and take on that too. So that's the general premise, is to say everyone's going to be covered one way or another. That's all that matters. First of all, that's not all that matters. But that's the premise of Medicare for all. Everyone's covered no matter what. And he's saying, I don't like the idea of taking away everyone's choice to stay on their current healthcare plan if they like it, or if it's better than Medicare, which is just perception. All right, so Medicare is pretty good.
So, and this is maybe when he releases his in-depth plan, some of this will come out in that statement, and we can go back to it here. In
Okay.
here, it does not say anything about A, limiting the government, B, limiting any of the insurance companies, or C, providing free health insurance at all to people, right? So if you're going to expand Medicaid, in my world, right,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I would do for my health insurance is I would drop it and get Medicaid for my whole family. I'm paying $450 a month roughly, and I have a $3,500 deductible.
Yeah, mine's very, very similar to yours.
So
Yep.
unless they're going to open it up and say anybody, period, can get Medicaid,
Medicare, yeah.
Medicare, sorry,
Mhm.
and anybody can get it, no questions asked, nothing. That has to be in there. You will never change the market because we're just at the same system that we're at.
Yeah, well, I think Medicare, well, of course, more details, but from what he said at his public speeches I've been to, is that Medicare for all will be available to everyone. So even if I'm on my company plan, I can opt out and say, okay, I'm done with you guys. I'm going to Medicare, and just switch it over, which will drive down the cost or incentivize them to have a cheaper plan that's more competitive with Medicare.
So I have another question, and sorry, I'm going to wrap it. I want to move through this type stuff.
Absolutely. I've done this 100 times, so I'm very prepared.
Okay, very good. So if you look at the next approach, and you're right, he does say Medicare for all system. He just doesn't explain what that means. He does say he's going to control his costs. If you look right here, I guess I got to put my highlighter on the screen.
There you go.
So you look right here, he does say that. And the doctors will be paid a flat salary. I like that. I get that. I like that, especially because, some of the off shift stuff is paid a lot higher.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming he'll take that into account too. But whatever. We'll move past that. That part I like. The question though I have is if everybody opts out, what about the taxes the employers pay? And just hear me out for this, because and again, I'm not a tax law expert, but from my understanding is like when I have to go give reviews to employees and different things like that, and I want to give people raises, I have to actually look at what is going to impact the total bottom line of my company. I can't just
Of course.
go to this statement of I'm going to give somebody a $3 an hour raise, because it's not just a $3 an hour raise, it's actually a $3.42 an hour raise
Because of taxes and everything.
Yes.
Yep.
But the reason they pay taxes, I believe, for the healthcare is that going to decrease if everybody opted out. So my company's 195 people. What if everybody dropped out?
Mm-hmm.
We're no longer part of that. Everybody jumps to the Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm.
Does the company still require to be able to pay taxes?
That's a good question.
And I think so. I know you're in the mix with Yang a little bit more than I am, and I'm just saying, hey, to me, this is the challenge point right here with the candidate. This is the challenge point. What are you going to do about that? Because if they have to pay less taxes, that means there's less money coming into the system. Companies will make more money, which is not always a bad thing. But at the exact same time, that the government's losing that income. And where is it going to get from? So not only are you going to offer health care to other places, to everybody for free, but you're not going to keep the same tax burden, from my understanding.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if your company pays taxes on the health care they provide?
Yes.
Okay.
Are they going to still have to pay the same taxes?
I think, again, I don't know shit. Let's put it that way. When it comes to that stuff, I've never owned a business. I've never been in management, but critical thinking's got to kick in, which doesn't mean it makes sense to government at all. Let's be honest. So, but from an outsider's perspective, saying, if you don't pay higher taxes for healthcare, that means your corporate taxes should go up to cover healthcare. That's what I would see. And somewhere in there, I don't know if it's in that policy, it does talk about corporate taxes. It's going to have to be redone to pay for this. Because they're going to pay nothing out of pocket for insurance. Because like my insurer, this is part of my package. Like Boyce Littlefield is worth X amount of dollars an hour that we pay him, but we also pay another $12 an hour for compensation for insurance, pay time off, and workman's comp and all that stuff. So I don't know how that looks on paper, but I know it's got to be refigured somehow. And that might be the hardest part of getting Medicare for All passed, is all these details that I don't know and most people don't know about. And that might take a little more time to get pushed through because of that. That's my biggest worry. This could take a whole damn first term to get put through, which is sad, but true.
Yes. And again, I'm not saying you have the answers or anything. That's all I'm saying is what are they paying? Because a lot of what they pay for, honestly, these taxes go to like a COBRA fund, right? And so when you lose your health insurance, you can buy COBRA still.
Right.
But you're still paying into it. But at some point it's somewhat subsidized.
Isn't that oxymoron? You lost your job. Now you can afford to pay for your own insurance, dumbass. I mean, come on. That's dumb.
Yeah. And so I believe, and I went on the IRS website, and it says the cost of healthcare insurance benefits must be included in wages of the corporation's employee who owns more than so many percent of shareholders. Which doesn't mean anything. Health insurance programs allow workers and their families to take care of the medical needs. A health plan can be the most important, yada, yada, yada. They must, provide COBRA insurance. So, again, I don't think his plan addresses it. And, yeah, we can move on from this. I don't know either. But what I do know is that if he doesn't fix that, we're never, it's not going to be addressed, which is where Elizabeth Warren comes into play, and she says these certain things, right? Where they're going to increase certain types of taxes, and that's what's going to pay for it. And I think if he can come up with that and demonstrate that, that's a seller for me, because everybody's very worried about that specific viewpoint,
Yeah, for sure. Oh, me too. I never even thought about that from an employer standpoint. I don't know enough about that stuff. And so that's a new question I could ask next time. If I get an opportunity to ask him a question, I'll ask him about that specifically if it isn't in the plan. Like, how does this address corporate taxes with the COBRA, stuff like that? Those are very good detailed questions. And I'm sure he's got people way smarter than me that know about that shit already that probably have asked that question, So that's what I'm assuming, that he has people that's their whole background. And plus he was a business owner. So I'm sure he's taking that consideration as well.
Yeah.
So it's all hearsay until we see his policy,
Very well.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one that we have is human-centered capitalism.
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah. So, Boyce, can you explain? I'm a little confused. I get what he's saying, right? I get that he's saying our emphasis is on corporate profits. This is going to be made worse by technology and AI. 100% agree with that. I actually agree with him probably more than I do on anything else. That AI is going to be a bigger factor, especially because of the amount of money companies are making to fix things.
Yeah. If we don't change something, we're going to have the first trillionaire, which is disgusting if you think about it.
Huh.
People are fucking starving and homeless, and yet we're going to have a trillionaire come from this capital system right now that has no brakes put on it at all, with like a corporate tax or even like a wealth type of tax, Yeah.
So what does this mean, I guess? What does human-centered capitalism mean? I mean, he doesn't really state. He just states that humans are better than money. We need to, change the economy to each person, not each dollar. I'm confused what he wants to change in this part of it.
Okay, so if you scroll down to where he says, "As president, I will," that kind of helps explain a little bit more here. Where it talks about,
there you go.
Yeah, so it talks about the economy, where GDP in the stock market doesn't tell us if we're doing better as humans. Our capital as a human being isn't being considered in our current market, where GDP goes up if there's a hurricane, but yet everyone's life is destroyed along that coastline. AI comes out and takes all the all the trucker miles will be taken up by self-driving vehicles. GDP goes up, but yet people are going to be unemployed, and more depression, more overdoses, more drugs and alcohol, and more suicide rates. So that's where he's got this is called human-centered capitalism, is just a blanket. But the true thing is a policy called the American Scorecard. If you go to that, it really, really explains it a little better. It's not in here. You got to go back to where it says, but it does talk about all those different things down there after the, as president, I will. It's a whole shit ton of stuff. It's a lot. It really is.
Yeah.
But it talks about the next stage of capitalism, how he would use, GDP is only a factor. It's not the end all thing, you know, and he would consider the American scorecard kind of tells you the big picture, how we will judge how our country's doing with humanism involved instead of just markets.
So, and I know what like in fairness, I know what a scorecard is just based on, you know, things that I've done, you know, for my company, right? Mm-hmm. You know, like, so I'm very familiar with a scorecard and how that works. I'm not very used to it using humanism. And I guess if that's his take on it, that's great. You know, and again, we could go through this. So these are the things he's saying should be included in the scorecard. Mm-hmm. A median income and standard of living. Again, that's kind of subjective, but okay. Levels of engagement with work and labor participation rate. I think we have some of that, right?
Well, right now it's just Trump's touting unemployment. Unemployment is all-time low for the blacks. You know, that's not a good number. It's actually, there's no people participating, so it looks so low. So that's kind of how he's saying this is what we really need to be looking at, is participation levels too.
Yeah. And maybe for me, the bigger thing here is, and this is where maybe he should change and get rid of this median income or standard of living, right? And combine those two and say the participation level and the income wage gap. Like, that's really what it should be. If you have you have the top 10 people in the United States own as much wealth as the rest of the nation, that's a problem.
Yes.
And maybe that's what he means by this, but to me that would be the first scorecard number for me.
Well, go to the policy. It's actually called the American Scorecard. You go up to the top and you can search. Here, American Scorecard. And it'll bring it up for you because it's hard to find. It's got 160 of them on there.
All right. American. There we go.
Yep, American Scorecard.
Yep.
So it shows how he would, you know, it's a big, long thing here about the GDP was never meant to tell us what the full story is here in the country. But it talks about consumer and student debt, income inequality. There's the word you're looking for right there. It actually, I'm highlighting on my own. You can't see it. Underemployment, childhood success rates, affordability, the environment's taken into consideration, pollution, all that stuff. You know, so he's saying all these things are that's why if you ever see a Yang thing, we'll kind of chant out PowerPoint. He says he wants to be the first president to bring a PowerPoint to the what do you call it? The first time the president talks to the country. That was like a State of the Address. He wants to do it on a State of the Address. He wants to say, here's a PowerPoint presentation. Here's our current American scorecard, and it's been our first year. Where have we improved? You know, that's what he means about this is going to be how he measures it, how well we're doing by a new scorecard. So yeah, it says marriage and divorce rates, access to education, national optimism. I'm not sure how you measure that.
Yeah, because I don't care about nationalism.
Yeah, like, I don't like that word either.
That's stupid.
Yeah, nationalism is taking credit for someone else's work. It's something you have nothing to do with. Anyway, infant mortality rate. This is another good one I like about that. Volunteering, does it go up or down? Or are more people volunteering?
Access to education. I think marriage and divorce rates is worthless. That should be immediately taken off.
He's actually into the whole marriage thing. That's kind of something I don't agree with him on.
All right. I did not know that.
He thinks that marriage is healthy. And that gives you a better home because you have two parents, and statistics show and the more words that are read to a kid at early age improves outcomes. You know, so statistically marriage is better for children's outcomes.
But
and that's
you know why? But you understand why.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I don't agree with him on that.
We all know why. Marriage is better because of the fact that you have to have two freaking incomes or one income and somebody stay home and deal with the kids.
Right.
Our system fails. He has... There you go, man. That's poor statistics right there. That's poor math.
Yeah, that's the one I don't like. I really don't agree with the whole marriage thing. Then again, if you have two parents in the home, they both don't have to work if they have UBI.
Well, yes, you're right. I see what you're saying.
More a month. So it supplements another job, and that gives that second parent either if they're married or not. It doesn't matter if you're married. You don't get. That's what I don't like about some other people's UBIs are trying to jump on the bandwagon now. Like Kamala Harris is like, oh, I'm going to give $500 UBI, but it's only if you're married and there's 2 people in the home. You know what I mean? So little things, but it's even if your kids are over 18, they get $1,000 a month too. So that's just kind of where he's like, okay, let's just, so and as far as marriage goes, I don't agree with him on the marriage thing because I'm not into it. But I would have agreed with him about 10 years ago, but I don't know more. I'm divorced twice, so fuck that. Or pardon my French, Facebook.
Yeah, I'm not into that either. And hey, buddy, in Canada, do you guys have a scorecard? Is that even like a discussion point? In Canada?
No, it's really not. A lot of the language you guys use, I'm sitting here and I'm going, what? We don't talk about any of these things. Like what? Like it, like the whole idea of a scorecard. I mean, I think that's a great idea because I think adjusting or taking a look at more statistics than just like the GDP is going to be a lot more valuable in, assessing how good a nation actually is doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, is it only a handful of people who are hoarding most of the money, or does everybody have access to adequate healthcare? Do people the lowest, considered the lowest members of society, do they have access to their basic needs? Like, do they have to live on the streets, or are they being provided something by the government so that they can get up on their feet and, as boomers like to say, pull themselves up by the bootstraps? Yeah. Basically, are they being given a fair chance? Not just, a chance, but a fair chance, which I think is the big difference. But no, I'm taking a look at this and I'm going, oh wow, you guys do a lot more than we worry about. I mean, I even watched the full debate and nothing about this came out. But
we're not currently doing this at all.
Yeah, this is not. This is something businesses do. Like,
yeah,
I have, in business, we have vendors and stuff like that, and we have scorecards for them. How good of a vendor? We have customers that have scorecards. Like in my industry, I'm a 3PL, so I have 2 sets of scorecards that we look at, right? So we look at, once we take on a client, and we also look at like carrier scorecards for transportation. So we have 2 sets of them, and then if you're in manufacturing, you look at, scorecards of all service providers. And so I've been involved in help developing and doing some of those things for some of the, customers I've worked with. But no, in America, this is like, nobody's ever thought of it. And I'll be honest, some of me thinks he's doing this, boys, and I don't mean to be a prick about it, but to me it almost feels like, hey, I'm doing this because if I want to grab my capitalist, friends here, that's going to speak to a lot of the, people that have had to deal with this crap.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
It definitely sounds that way. I mean, he does seem to be more closer to like the libertarian thing is one of the things that I've been hearing. But obviously trying to bring a more equitable set of policies instead to the marketplace and using the language that they're comfortable with. And that does kind of work with the angle that he's trying to push, right? Instead of just, coming to somebody and talking at them, it probably just makes them feel more like he's talking to them. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, politically speaking, is actually a really good move.
Well, and like, for me, I'm liberal about a lot of things. I'm conservative about a couple of things. And I'm libertarian about some more too. So he's kind of coming at it like that, like a normal person would. Like, this is just how I see it in my background, as it was a law degree, a degree in economics, and a degree in political science. This is how I see the big picture. This liberal talking point or this liberal ideology works here, but not here. I think a more libertarian thing will get this thing paid for versus just everything, one ideology cures all type of thing, So it does have more conservative approaches, maybe to gun control, stuff like that. He has a little more conservative point of view to liberals, but he has a very liberal point of view compared to conservatives. So it's one of those things where he's not making either happy with some of these policies, but it is the policy nonetheless.
Well, I think that might cater to some of the more center-going people who find themselves or align themselves rather with the Democratic Party. So I can definitely see that. And I mean, we're all humans, so we all kind of approach things differently. And I do think there is a valid way to check and balance a political ideology and, keep it from being exploited and running amok. And, I like the name human-centered capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
where it's focusing more on the people instead of, the almighty dollar bill, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, the current system of capitalism only works because people are exploited, because there are people who are impoverished and are in a cycle of poverty because somebody makes a lot more money by keeping them there and by getting them to keep working for pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems like, and as much as I would love to see a radical shift, I do think that if progress is going to happen, maybe baby steps are going to be more along the way, and maybe this would be more palatable to the average Joe, so to speak. Especially since so many of the diehard conservatives, they hear the socialist language, they hear the word taxes and they go, oh no, I can't have more taxes. Let's put more money in my pocket. I don't want to pay more taxes, even though the current Republicans are taking more out of their pockets and putting them back in the pockets of the people who, they work for, which is just kind of an interesting little cognitive dissonance. But I do think using that language might be more effective. Not that I necessarily 100% agree with it, but I could see that it would, work in his favor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's a weird position to be in, but I don't know if I disagree with that side of it, other than the marriage thing. I do.
Yeah, I don't agree with him on that. I don't agree. I don't agree with everything. So he's the most close to who I see myself as far as ideologically.
Yeah. So moving on to the freedom dividend, and I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on this, just because I think this is his biggest talking point.
Yes.
Use my spittle. But that's probably the biggest talking point here. And I'll agree. I'm 100% for UBI. That's just me. That's me saying it out loud. Like I agree. I think the difference between him and I maybe is if you hit over a certain wealth income, it's really not needed, And I would almost say if you're in, let's just say this top 10% of Americans, you probably don't need that income wise.
Well, you really don't get it if you're that high either, because you're paying in $1 million a month in taxes.
Fair
so
enough.
$1,000 back at you, just like this, just reminds you, hey, you're an American too. Don't forget. And
All
that
right,
way,
fair
it's
enough.
universal. That's his talking point. That's what I've heard him say. Like that's the way I want to remind Bill Gates and whoever rich people, insert name, Walmart people. That reminds them they're American. But there's also an opt-in. You can opt out and say I want to donate to a charity and just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think that was there you go. You're stealing my thunder, man. That was actually the big thing I wanted to talk about, is because like in my world, $2,000 a month in my household is awesome, right? But at some point, I'll be honest, I could tell you right now, I would probably spend more in charity.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely want to help more people,
and that's just me. Like I spend. I grew up spending 10% of my income donating to a church, right? Whether they did good, bad, or indifferent, I'm used to that. It's your tithes,
Brother Chris.
Yeah. And look, Brother Chris, I'm telling you, Brother Chris has been tithing since he's been 8 years old.
Ugh.
And technically speaking, almost probably before that without knowing it, but at least as of 8 years, if you got $100 for Christmas, which we didn't, but if you did, let's say $10 went into that offering plate. It didn't matter if it was a gift. You didn't, even if I didn't earn it, if it was a gift, it went into the offering plate. And I'll wait to see if my mom comes on and picks that apart. But I'm telling you, for Christ's sake, right now, we did. They would make us, me and my sister. They didn't make our younger siblings after a while, but when me and my sister were young, we tithed since 8 years old.
Jesus.
I've never put $1 in a plate in my life.
Neither did I, but Apparently, my grandmother refused to take my dad after one time she tried to take my dad and his sisters, and my dad took $5 out of the plate.
Hey, give it to the needy, man. It's the whole point, right?
Oh, kids need it. You know,
cut
candy.
out the middleman.
I like that. I like that, actually.
I don't know. I'm kind of in favor of it. I mean, if you're going to rape kids, you may as well pay them.
Oh.
Ooh, that's low,
Ooh.
brother.
At my
Too
church,
soon?
I don't think that happened.
Low
No.
or honest?
Well, you know, a little both.
That's right, because there's more Catholics up in Canada than there is anything else, isn't there?
I mean, most Filipinos are, and we have a very, very large Filipino population, especially a large influx of Filipinos. So maybe.
Fair enough.
Maybe.
Either which way, let's move on from that. You know, so that was the one thing I wanted to bring up about this that had not been a big known thing, is that you can donate this money somewhere else. And again, in my household, $2,000, that's like that's 3 house payments.
Yeah.
I could be putting 3 house payments down every month between the wife and I.
So fast, man. Imagine that.
But
Yeah.
then the banks won't make as much money off of the interest rates.
Darn it.
Yeah.
Oh, darn.
And
You
you're
might even
right.
be able to get a rental property then. Who knows?
Well, you're right, but now you're paying taxes on that income anyway. But you know what I'm saying, though? Like,
Yeah.
that, I think, and I think people are scared because what is it going to do? Think about what you can buy. Now, it's proven that the majority of Americans, and if I have to come up, if somebody's watching this and they want to challenge me, go ahead. But I'm pretty sure that the majority of Americans, if we look at a percentage ratio, that I'm going to guess 95 to 96% of Americans will pay for what is needed first beforehand. So if you hand somebody $2,000 a month, they're not going to go out and buy 3 Rolexes a month. They're not going to go out and buy a Bentley or a Benz.
Yeah. Well, that first one's gonna be a motherfucker. You're gonna blow that sucker. You're gonna be like, I'm going on vacation. I'm gonna go to an indoor pool in the winter so I can swim and have a drink. But when it really comes right down to it, you're gonna take care of your necessities. You won't do that unless your necessities are taken care of. And I always compare it to that hierarchy of
Maslow's pyramid, my friend.
There you go. Thank you very much.
It's like the staple of this show.
Exactly. So the freedom dividend is designed to push you up at least one more rung. If you got all your daily needs met, now you can pursue education. If you already got your education, you can pursue acquiring assets as far as like a house, paying off a house. If you already have all that shit, you can afford to go on more vacations or more charity or volunteer more. That's you know more about it than I do, honestly. But yeah, so it's designed to help you go up a rung. No one should be at the bottom rung without food and shelter.
Yeah, think about this too. It fixes your minimum wage issue too.
Yeah, it's a $5.93 an hour raise, even if you don't have a job.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
But here's the thing, though: the freedom dividend is useless without Medicare for all. Because if you have medical bills, now our tax dollars is just going to go to the insurance plan to pay
Fair
off your
enough.
medical
Yep.
bills. So we got to have Medicare for all. For every single person's got to be covered by an insurance. I don't give a shit who, someone. That way, you're not taking your freedom dividend and just handing it over to the insurance companies, especially private insurance companies. Screw that.
Sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can find something so I don't sound so foolish. But what exactly the hell is the freedom dividend?
$1,000 a month, untaxed.
It's
so
UBI. He just renamed it.
Well, no, UBI isn't a number. It's just universal basic income.
Yeah.
Freedom dividend is 1,000 untaxed. Period. If you're over 18. Period.
Okay, so if you're over 18, $1,000 per month of your income cannot be taxed.
No.
No,
they
no,
give
you get cash.
$1,000.
You're getting
Okay.
cash.
Okay, it's just now I know. And knowing is half the battle.
And they can't tax you on it, so it doesn't bump you up another tax bracket per se. Penalize you for that.
Yeah,
Nice.
because that would be, think about that. If you go up, his example was the $18,000 to $30,000 a year, right? It's $12,000 a year per person. Can you imagine jumping up a bracket? You're going to be paying a quarter of that in taxes just by that income bracket jump.
So that $1,000 becomes $750 a month all of a sudden.
Yeah, and at that point, you might as well just hand somebody $750 a month. So all he's doing is taking the math out of it and saying, "Here's cash. Do with it what you want. I'm not going to tax you on it."
Just cuts out the middleman again.
Again, don't know how, he doesn't really detail where he's going to get the money for it. I'm
VAT
assuming
tax.
what?
The VAT tax, value added tax. So the VAT tax is something that's done in all other industrialized countries like ourselves. We're just the only one that doesn't do it. There's actually a map that I have too that I could find, but it shows all the other countries and how much their VATs are. So like he's going to introduce a 10% VAT tax, a value added tax on all goods, but it can be catered so it doesn't tax us for daily needs like diapers and formula, everyday stuff for poor people.
I didn't realize that you guys had something like that, because I know in Canada there are specific items that we do not tax, and
Right.
there's a bit of a hullabaloo a few years ago because they actually, for some reason, finally added feminine hygiene products to it, and there was a big debate about that one. And a friend of mine's husband and I kind of got into it a little bit, and I'm amazed that I kept my composure, because I almost told him he was a dumbass and an asshole for arguing that in front of his woman there, because she I know is very into feminism and women's rights and all of that, but he was basically saying, well, I still pay taxes on condoms, and it's like that's not the same damn thing.
It's not the same thing at all.
So I think
we don't have a VAT at all in this country whatsoever.
Yeah,
and
so
the new tax.
Yeah, and you do know, so here he says it's going to be 10%, right? It's a 10% tax. I'm assuming this is on income, correct?
No, on purchases.
On purchases. Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's like a sales tax, but it's not on everything. He says he's going to make it where they're going to do their research and make sure it doesn't affect people that are making like $30,000 a year person is not going to be paying 10% of their shit on all their purchases, because that will penalize them for everyday stuff you have to have. What he's saying is personalize it to only for people that are spending stuff on, like, we buy a boat or a yacht or a second and third home or whatever. I'm not sure how that works with homes, honestly, but he's saying he's going to cater it to not penalize the poor people for buying things you got to use to get by, like food and baby formula.
It's a luxury tax, man. That's much to some extent what it is.
It's a luxury purchase tax. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's on spending, not on income at all.
The only issue I see with that one, and maybe it's just because I haven't fully read it, is just, corporations and big, like the Amazon, Google, and all of that. He's talking about them moving billions overseas. If all of a sudden they have to pay more to sell things, the only thing that I see is them just hiking the price of their products, just to try to recoup that loss. Kind of in the same vein of, you have a business tax break, they won't reinvest it and hire more people. They'll just, consider a profit.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking this tax and being like, well, sorry, consumer, you guys have to pay more because we have to pay more. The average person doesn't seem to understand that they could look at the producer and be like, hey, you're screwing me because you're making money off of me, and now you're not making enough money off of me.
Yeah.
That's the only issue that I see with something like that. I mean, obviously, luxury goods, I don't give a shit if a yacht goes up, 10% or 100, 20%. Like, that's not something that's in my bracket.
Right.
And obviously, somebody who's paying for that yacht, they can afford the extra little bit.
Exactly. If you could afford the yacht, you can be okay. Well, I'll pay another $20,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the only problem that I see with something like that, is just like, that being gouged out of the everyday person, So basically everyday good.
Here it is right here. I found it. It is it's a consumption tax assessed on the value added to goods and services. It applies more or less to all goods and services that are bought and sold for use or consumption in the EU. Thus, goods that are sold for exports or services are not subject to VAT tax.
Yeah, so like I just noticed on my Patreon, there's a VAT section now.
Oh,
yeah. So if you have a Patreon based out of a European country, you got to pay a VAT tax on your Patreon too, as an income tax or a value added tax on that transaction. And so again, I don't know enough about that type of stuff to have a good idea. But I actually could go. So
It's a
there's
percentage of the sale price,
Mhm.
but this is this is the taxable person is entitled to deduct all the tax paid at the preceding stage. Therefore, double taxation is avoided, which is good because that's the first thing that people are going to be worried about. And it's only paid at each stage of production and distribution.
Yeah, so
But
that's
here
the
you go. So
European model.
it's he's taxing businesses throughout the process.
Yeah,
If anybody learns what this is, he's going to lose every libertarian supporter he had. Like,
I mean, this is way more liberal of a
oh,
policy.
holy crap! This is.
Yeah.
Look at this. So here it is. A miner sells iron ore to a smelter. The sale is $1,000. The VAT tax is 20%.
That's what it is in Europe as an average.
Yep. It should pay $200 to the treasury, but as it has bought $240 worth of material, it is included with a $40 VAT tax and is required to pay $160.
Yep. So it's taxing every time you add value to a product. Like, let's say you're doing machining and you got the raw iron, then you make brake pads out of it. That value is going to be taxed.
So we're paying this then, right? We're just not paying it. We're paying it in the consumer price
We're already paying for it. Yeah.
because
They're jacking up our prices.
what does America produce in house? where we do this? Okay, and get this. Here you go. And here's the big deal. And this is what a lot of companies are doing. And I only say this because in the logistics business, there's companies that will make stuff in China, right? And what they're doing now is sending it to alternative countries that Trump does not have a tax war with.
Mhm.
So they're sending it to India.
Yeah.
So we are actually seeing imports from India skyrocket. You know what? India, and this is what you have to do. And this is nothing secret. Like, this is not secret trade stuff. What you have to do is you have to significantly modify something on that piece to be able to avoid paying the taxes.
Mhm.
So you can't just unbox it and rebox it, right? That can't happen. But you can unbox it, put a extra screw in it,
Just do something. Mm-hmm.
and a handle, and you're done. And you rebox it and send it out.
Yeah, that's the whole tricky part of it. Just like things are assembled in America, and it's only like it's not the whole damn car is assembled in America. Like the brakes are put on in America and the tires. La-di-da.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to move off this in a second, but to me, I think the big thing here is I agree with them. I actually genuinely like this idea 100%. Like, I think this is a big, for me, this is a big thing. But for me, the other thing that I would say is how much do we actually do, and will we be able to actually genuinely cover that amount of money? That's all I got to say.
For the UBI?
Yeah. Because
no, not all of it. No, he doesn't say not all of it. Nope.
And I only say that because for me, the VAT tax, I just don't think that that's going to fix that, right? I don't think that there's enough value add stuff that happens. But we could be wrong. We could be wrong.
But it also includes purchases.
That's true. That is true.
So there's a production side, then there's the purchase side of it. So you've got he says about $800 billion. If nothing changes right now as our business, and nothing grows, nothing dies, about $800 billion from VAT on the production side and the consumption side. So that's not close enough to the 2.4 trillion. I think they said is how much the UBI will cost. And so he's saying, okay, we're not going to generate enough to cover it all, but there are other ways of generating more income with trade deals and stuff like that, where we've got some things that can be improved upon, like what's that new one they're calling it now for the North American, the NAFTA replacement that Trump did. So I don't know what that's called, USMCA or some shit like that. But he's saying there's other trade deals we can do like that. So we have to undo all the damage Trump's done with these trade deals that's hurt the farmers and whatnot. And that could, who knows how that looks? I don't know.
So many things that will need to be undone from Trump. It's kind of amazing.
Pre-trial cash bail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just unreal.
Unreal. So the next topic I want to talk about, I want to move into some of his policies that, and again, we've been talking for an hour on this already.
Yeah. And
we really
I haven't gotten a text yet, so we're still good. Yep.
But he has some criminal justice reform, and I don't know how long we'll have to spend on this, but I think this is important to have a conversation about. He wants to decrease pretrial cash bail that people have to pay that they can't afford. And I think this is huge, actually. Like, out of a lot of his other policies, to me, this is a pretty big one.
Yeah, I haven't even read that yet, so this is new to me.
So what he's talking about is a lot of Americans have to pay, bail before they can leave. It has cost the country $80 billion per year in incarceration costs and loss of productivity.
Damn.
And so what he's saying is there's a lot of people that could go to jail. They can't afford to make their bail. And so he's saying, let's look at this and decrease the amount of money people have to pay to get out of jail.
Yeah. It's just punitive for poor people. That's why you can't get out. You can't afford it.
Yes. This is huge.
Go to work. You can't go to work.
But then it's going to put people like Dog the Bounty Hunter out of work.
Oh man. I didn't even know that dude still existed. Is he still in business?
His wife, I think so. His wife just passed away though. Earlier in the year. Well,
now I can't make fun of him, man. Like, I feel bad for him.
We can still make fun of his mullet and shit, though.
You can.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. That is like the AT&T of haircuts.
Oh.
All right. Anyway. So what he's saying is this is putting pressure on plea agreements, even when they have not committed a crime, as they wait for trial while in jail, because it can impose longer incarceration periods than the plea deal.
Yep. Exactly.
And this is also to the whole plea thing, is that it's basically making it so people can't afford to defend themselves, right?
Yes.
So people basically, they have to go to jail for a crime whether they committed it or not, or there's other circumstances involving, say, maybe the officer misrepresented, or whatever. And basically it's continuing the whole thing where people are labeled as bad, and then they live with that label, and they're stuck with that label, and they can't get rid of it. There's a stigma against them, and they're incarcerated for petty little crimes, simply because, some county or some jail, some privately funded jail needs, a couple more people to work. Right.
They got their protocols, or their 85% head count,
Yeah.
And
shit.
Bail is really screwy because, I mean, so many of the crimes where bail is set really high, the people committing it are, their low socioeconomic status, which is part of the reason why they turn to crime. And then you look at white collar crime, and, when bail is set, people can afford it because, it's not proportionate to the value of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And white collar crime as it is hard, or is vastly under investigated, under punished, and all of that, which from what I've heard in other podcasts is that if white collar crime were to actually be, prosecuted the way it should be, would actually generate a lot more revenue than chasing down petty little, shoplifters and whatnot.
Well, I'll give you a personal experience with this shit system. Ooh. I was accused of stealing $20 or $19.75 in gas back in 1990, whatever the hell it was. But I actually paid for it in the parking lot. I forgot to pay for it. The guy ran out and stopped me and said, "Hey, you forgot to pay." I said, "Here's 20." But when you pull away from a pump in America, you automatically get a warrant out for your arrest. The prosecuting attorney didn't drop those charges. So when I got pulled over for a seatbelt infraction, I got arrested on Memorial Day weekend and had to go to jail for the day. And it cost me $500 to get out for a $20 dispute. So that's just a perfect example. If I didn't have $500, I'm sitting there until the trial, which is like a month later.
And then in that time, you've probably lost your job.
Relationships, you're about ready to kill somebody and get beat up or hurt someone and catch more charges in jail.
Yeah, and then next time you go for a job interview. Well, why did you lose your last job? Well,
exactly.
And the only way to put it is be like, well, there was a minor dispute. I forgot to pay $20. The guy came out, but the cop came by, grabbed me, and threw me in jail because he could.
Mm-hmm. Even if I did steal the $20, is it worth $500 in bail? I mean, come on.
Oh, not at all.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's catering to the whole cycle of poverty thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's another policy has is ending privatized prisons. Period. It's obvious.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's cheaper to pay you to not go to jail. With the UBI, you're losing. So if you go to jail, you don't get UBI.
Right.
So it pays to stay out. Crime doesn't always pay in that moment, unless your crime's
That's
over
true.
$1,000 a month.
Some of
might-
it is not mine.
Like,
but
if you're gonna do it, you got to go big or go home, right? But
that's true.
Yeah, because then you can afford the lawyers to defend you to get you off scot-free.
yeah.
The next one that he has on here is reduce mass incarceration. And that's kind of, I think that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah,
Outside of his universal basic income
Mhm.
policy, he wants to eliminate poverty, which I don't think you're going to ever be able to do in capitalism, but he wants to try to eliminate it and reduce one of the common driving factors of crime, right? And I would agree, you start giving people money, that does actually reduce that. If you, and this is the sad thing, if you can sell drugs and make more money than working at McDonald's,
It's a
people are
no-brainer.
going to do it, man. Whether we like it or not, that people got to live. It's Maslow's pyramid 101,
survival.
Yeah. And so I agree, actually. I think you're right. If you fix the medical side, you start handing people a little bit more of money a month, and again, we say this, but I like that he wants to do this, but we do understand the government actually does have a universal basic income program. It just isn't for everybody.
What do you mean, like
Right.
welfare?
Yeah, you get welfare, but it's just it's heavily denied, and you have to be very, very poor to get it.
Right. And that's why it's $12,000, because right now the current statistics say that the poverty level is like $12,800. So
Yeah.
he's saying even with this UBI, you're still considered in poverty, so you're still incentivized to go get some work.
You still have to
gotta-
go out,
You still got to participate in the job market.
but you're not punished for, not being able to get a full-time job.
Right? You can still survive.
Yes.
And so that's the other thing is it stacks on top of Social Security. If you're drawing Social Security, is a $12,000 a year raise. If you're in the military, $12,000 raise. It doesn't matter. It's just a $12,000 raise. The only thing it applies to that will as far as welfare goes, if it's a cash program like food stamps, it's an opt-in. You got to forego food stamps and take the UBI. You can spend it on whatever you want. You don't have to go sell your debit card. That's $1,000 or say $500 a month in food stamps. You don't have to sell it to get $300 in cash, so you can go buy your cigarettes or whatever the hell you want to go buy. Which my mom did that when I was a kid. We had to go take her like a $1 food stamp. We go buy a 25-cent pack of juicy fruit and shit in Big Red and 5-cent change, so she could get enough of those to go buy her cigarettes with or whatever. That's just part of the hustle, which is gross, but nonetheless, it does happen. Yeah. Anyway, back to mass incarceration. My bad.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I agree with that. I actually agree with that. So, they're talking, he talks in here, again, minorities are disproportionately represented in the incarceration group. 100% agree.
Significantly, yes.
Yeah. He's going to shift federal drug policies away from punishment and the treatment. Agree.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to
Yep.
end the use of for-profit private prisons.
Hell
Hallelujah.
yeah.
Like,
Check.
that's definitely not a libertarian viewpoint right there. He's going to fund programs targeted at reducing the readmission
Recidivism.
rates to jail.
Recidivity.
There you go.
Recidivism.
I know you weren't going to try that one.
I wasn't going to. Nope.
It's fun to listen to you try.
Nope, it's not.
I was waiting.
Recidivism. There you go.
There you go. Nice try. That's a good try.
And that's huge. Again, not a libertarian point of view.
Yeah,
Which is sad that the one libertarian point of view is his medical thing, but whatever. He's going to push for reconsideration of the harshest of our felony laws, including any investigation into any civil rights issues that are raised by disproportionate amounts of minorities convicted of these crimes. And I like that probably the most. Because, there's such a wide breadth of what your punishment can be, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's the same. Like, if you get caught raping somebody, it's like 4 to 10 years or something like that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
if you get caught with more than X amount of marijuana, you're looking at 2 to 20 years. So your range is just so high
Mhm.
for, you know, because they leave it open. And in my opinion, again, it's so that it's because people are racist and they built laws to allow them to continue to be racist.
Yeah, if
You
you're
know?
Jamal,
Without-
you get 20. If you're Jeffrey, you get 2.
Yeah, exactly.
That's racial wiggle room.
But his biggest thing, that's my favorite one. But his biggest thing is he's going to end private prisons. He's going to shift drug policies away from punishment. Those two right there are just going to. Those two right there will actually hit 80% of some of the issues that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm very much in favor of the funding programs targeted at reducing recidivism and increasing reintegration. And admittedly, part of it is because a friend of mine did her master's thesis on the idea of restorative justice, which is basically, you know, you work with the victims or families of victims and whatnot, as well as, you know, the suspect in the instance or for the crime, and basically work towards, you know, almost like community rebuilding, as far as I understand it. So instead of, you know, oh, you did a bad thing, here's a backhand, now you go to jail, and, you know, you basically the system's perpetual bitch now because we've got your name. It's, you know, giving people a chance and saying, you know, we're all human. We understand, you know, sometimes bad things happen, and it's important that, you know, as we progress as a society, we grow and we stop seeing people as something we can just beat around, but rather, you know, we see that people are just human beings just trying to get through the day, and we give them that empathy and that compassion. And I'm really in favor of that. Especially because a lot of petty crimes just seem to get this, you know, you basically, you know, some kid gets busted for selling marijuana, you know, he's in jail for 10 years because he doesn't have the right skin color. Well, now you've taken somebody who wasn't a criminal and made them a criminal. And by slapping that label on them, people do tend to adhere to that label because that's all they think they are. So that's all they think they can amount to be. And that's really damaging towards the community, and that does not help with the idea of growth.
Yep. Big time.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think that's the biggest thing here, right? You know, as we talk through that, if they don't have the ability to do those things and contribute back to society, we're never going to get to where we're at. You know, we're just never going to get there. So I want to go. I'm going to go back to some policies. We're going to go real quickly through a few of these, and then we'll kind of wrap up and move on. So I like his LGBTQ rights discussion. He doesn't have a lot of information in here, honestly.
No, it's pretty basic.
It is.
Everyone deserves the same shit.
I like how he calls out trans individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I agree very much so with that. So he has that in there. I am very weird about, you know, him saying I'm pro gay marriage, because why should all straight people have fun? I think that's
Again, the marriage thing is a thing for him. Yep.
Yeah, that's not my favorite statement, but he's going to promote any legislation to extend protection to sexual orientation and gender identity like that. He's going to increase funding for programs like that. You know, so I think both of those are really big there. Family medical paid lead act. Again, he doesn't have a ton of information in here, but he's going to basically, and this is a little weird because this is a lot. 6 months for paid leave for a single parent, or
9 months.
Yeah,
requiring 9 months
between parents. That's a lot.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say I agree with that much time, but I am excited to see that he's going to put something in play, or he wants to put something in place.
Well, what he's saying there is you have two parents that go to two different employers. One parent can go for 4 months, the other can go for 5, you know, and kind of keep that family cohesion is his thing, is he wants that family cohesion, parents raising their kids, not babysitters, not daycare centers, you know?
Yeah. Now, and sorry, this is a little ambiguous to me. Is this talking about like parental leave, like in terms of, you know, the new
Yep.
or?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if a woman has a baby, she can take 9 months off, or 6 months off, or 9 months together with her and her husband or boyfriend.
Wow, that's that's
big
mind blowing for me, because like in Canada, I believe you can get up to a year for mat leave. You take they only give you, I think it's only like 2/3 of your salary for that year, but that's still like a year you're not, out of pay because you're not working. That's, you're getting an income, but you're still able to stay at home, bond with your kid, raise your kid, be a part of that kid's life.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who can't, because they can't afford to live on 2/3 of their income.
Yeah.
However, there still is that option. Like my wife, fortunately, being a teacher, and for however long that lasts, but that's Alberta government is being stupid. But she gets to take a year off, and actually she probably get a couple extra months off because of summer vacation. And if we just time it right, that's more than a year, and she has the option of taking up to 18 months, but it's only the same amount of pay
for the 1 year.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, and I guess you don't have to answer this today, but I'm giving you homework. I want to know how that's paid for. I want to understand how that's paid for, because maybe I'm wrong, right? And, maybe I'm wrong in that this seems very high, right? Maybe I'm the conservative on this viewpoint here, right?
Well, I think the average is 6 months in like first world nation type of standards. The average is 6. That's why he says 6 for just a single mother, or up to 9. Or does it say 9 months for a family? How's that say? Go back to that. I didn't read that all the way through. Let me see.
At least 9 months. 9 months of paid family leave distributed between parents however they see fit.
Okay, or 6 months for a single parent. I gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I would even say it should be the other way around, personally. If you're a single parent, you should be there for 9 damn months.
Yeah, I would agree too. But anyway, so Keith, if you could figure out how that comes out of your taxes or where that's absorbed, that would be awesome. So that's your task. You can write that down. You're not writing it down. I don't see. I'm zooming in.
I already typed it on my notes. Calm yourself.
All right.
He didn't write it with a pencil.
So anyway, I like that policy, and like for somebody like my sister who's very anti, she's very on the border. I think that might sell her on some of this.
Okay.
So let's go to abortion.
Yep, he's definitely pro-choice.
Yep. And so, I like what he says, here as well. He will appoint judges who supports a woman's right to choose. He's going to support a woman's rights to choose in every circumstance and provide resources for planning and contraception. And because he obviously knows the reality here, folks, the reality, and I'm preaching to the choir, but the reality is 100% the fact that if you allow a woman to choose and give them planning and contraceptive tools, you reduce abortion rates, period. Just a fact.
Yep. And also another fact is that most people get abortions because they can't afford the kid. He always ties that back into the UBI too, to say that will also decrease abortions if you have the mathematician. I like that touch. It says that if you have more resources, you could choose to have a baby still, and say, I think I see a path forward to provide a healthy home for this child. That's I can't remember. I think it's like 40 to 50%. It might be even higher. That I think it's 70% of abortions because of economic reasons.
Yeah. Nope. I agree with you.
Yeah. But here's the thing. He also says men should not be in the room even discussing this with them. It should be a women's choice, period. No men should be in the room. Leave the room. It's none of our business. It's their business.
Not your body, not your choice.
Yep. Just leave the room. He says, I'm leaving the room. I'm letting this between the women and my cabinet decide this, not me. Which he says at any point, the choice at any point under any circumstance.
Yep. So we'll go back. And again, I think we've covered a lot here. I mean, for me, those are the biggest points, honestly. Like he has some foreign policy, principles. We'll get, I guess maybe we'll touch on that in a second. He wants to address the opioid crisis. control drug costs, reduce the student loan burden, promote vocational education. I'm not going to get into this right now because I don't want to know how he wants to do that. I agree with him, though, 100% on that. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
He supports the Dreamer Act. He wants to create a better pathway for citizenship and entice the highly skilled individuals.
Now click on the immigration thing, though. No, up top. On the actual word.
Yeah, it doesn't click. See?
What the hell? There should be a shit ton of more policies there.
Yeah, there's not. There is. If you search for them, you can click here and see it has other ones that come up.
Uh-oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Click on the more section of it.
Yep,
there
I did.
It is. That's it. My bad. Yeah. So there's all each one has a whole drop down too. It's just 3 of the top ones in each section there.
Yep.
The Southern border policy. Yeah.
Yep. Here's the bigger one, and I guess maybe we should touch on this. He's talking about. I don't know if I want to go into this honestly.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the big thing in the military is we're involving ourselves in things that we shouldn't be involving ourselves in, which is where a lot of our money goes.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm going to do is I'll turn it back over to you, Boyce, and I'll just say, hey, you tell me, what is his opinion on jumping into foreign policy and being involved as like a state-controlled nation?
Well, his big thing is he signed the Ending Forever Wars. He's pro non-interventionist. He doesn't want to use the military to start wars. And that's the big one. That's why he is. And also, he has no experience with this firsthand. He's never served, and he's never been in politics that decides whatever to do with this shit, whatever how you want to look at that. But my big thing is he will get the best and the brightest to help him make those decisions as well. And that's a big thing I kind of default to. But the big thing is he just wants to, stop intervening and doing regime change wars and all that kind of shit. Just it's none of our business to be deciding who's in charge of whose country type of thing, I guess.
But then how can you make a country work in your best interests if you don't try to control them?
Oh,
no, there you go. That's a conservative point, right? Yeah. So he also says in there he believes that, the whole Israel thing came up. So someone said, where do you stand on Israel? He goes, okay, I'll form a policy. And he actually did a little investigation. And he said the best idea is a 2-state solution. That's all he'll support. He won't support the Palestinians over Israel or Israel over Palestinians. Work towards a 2-state solution, which makes the most sense to me as well. Right now, we're 100% on board with Israel. Let's arm them. Let them kill everyone they want. Snipe these poor little Palestinians who have like 10% of their territory has been swallowed up, and they're allowed to just pot shot and kill them. It's disgusting.
Well, that would be the ideal, wouldn't it?
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've voiced enough about you, Boyce. Yes.
It's about me, bro.
We've heard enough about your campaign for the president.
Mathematics.
Yeah. Mathematician.
Yeah. So I could tell you I'm a little bit more sold on Yang than I was hour and a half ago.
Just stick around. There's more. No.
No, we're not.
Not here.
Yeah, not here.
You can jump my live streams and ask more questions. So
yeah. So, and that's fine. And if anybody wants to do that, we always post Boyce's information in the comment section, or not the comments. Oh my god, in the notes section of the show. So you can always follow Boyce that way. I think the big takeaway here is Andrew Yang is we're gonna call we'll use a business rule here.
Ooh,
we're gonna use a business rule. We're gonna use a Pareto rule, 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
I'm going to say he's 80% good and 20% bad. There you go. 80-20 rule. And 80, typically when we talk about that, he's going to address the 20% of the largest issues in America, right, and it'll have the 80% of the difference. And I think if looking at this, and again, this is just the first pass at any candidate we've looked at, because next week we're going to take a look at a different one. I think this kind of genuinely shows a pretty big a pretty big swing for him as an individual. And, maybe this is why you've been so excited, boys. Maybe that's why you're excited because of this.
Yeah.
And I'm saying is, I don't disagree. If he gets in, he's probably got a better chance for my vote than Trump. Pretty easy,
That's not saying much.
Yeah, that's not saying much.
That's not saying much.
And I could definitely tell you that he's definitely hit my top third spot over every other candidate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got something for everybody. It just depends on what your priorities are. It's what it comes down to.
Fair enough. So as we wrap the show up, we have Buddy has a couple of different things he wants to do. He wants to go through. I don't know. Do we have a name for? I don't know. I don't know what we would call it other than Canada Votes 2019.
You know what? I like it. I'll take it. Right. So a couple of weeks ago, as we teased, there was a Canadian election. We actually recorded as results were coming in, so you probably already heard that, assuming that you're a longtime listener. If this is your first show ever, hi, welcome. And there was a bit of a breakdown that I did because there's been a bit of a hubbub. I'm not going to go into the hubbub right now. I'm just going to say that that's going on, and that's something that I'm going to talk about later, simply because it's something that's really grating on my nerves, but it's also kind of laughable at the same time. If you've ever seen hashtag WEXIT, Wexit, I think it's called, just know that it is laughable at best. So on to the results here. Was it Hannah that was in love with Trudeau?
Oh, no idea.
I didn't realize Tanner had stepped away to grab a drink of water. Okay, we're going to assume it was Hannah, just because I can. And he was madly in love with Trudeau. A lot of people really like Trudeau. He's a bit of a pretty boy. He does come from, his father actually was Prime Minister of Canada, the 70s, 80s, Pierre Trudeau. He was our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So anyways, the breakdown. Now, we don't have the Electoral College, which if you've been listening, you know that we use first past the post. We use ridings instead of electoral candidacy votes. I don't know how your Electoral College votes. It reads like stereo instructions to me. Anyways, so we have 338 seats in our parliament, which is our federal government. The party that holds the most seats, they get to be the government. So that is currently the Liberal government. They hold the most amount of seats. They hold 157 of our 338 seats. So they have about 46% of the seats. Conservatives, they have 121 seats, or about 36%. The Bloc Québécois have 32, which is about 10%. The NDP have 24 seats. The Green have 3 seats. And there is 1 independent seat in the House. The People's Party of Canada got no seats, and no other parties got seats. So those are the small-time parties like the Canadian Communist Party, or other small time people who they just want to get out and do politics their way. But this is actually very different from the popular vote. So I think you guys can remember back in the election, we try to forget it near the end of 2016 there, where the popular vote was lost by about 3 million votes and the other guy won, right?
Bingo.
Yes.
Well, at the popular vote in Canada, as it goes, so I gave you the amount of seats and percentages. So the Liberal actually only have 33% of the vote, yet they control 46% of the seats. And this is where a big part of you brought it up. This is a big part of where the hubbub that I was talking to comes up, because the Conservatives actually received more of the popular vote. They received 34%, but they have 36% of the seats. So both parties did actually end up benefiting from this system. Liberals just benefit by a lot more. So the Bloc, they only had 7% of the seats, in spite of the fact that they only ran in 1 province. Next up, the NDP, who actually had about 16% of the vote, but they only wound up with 7% of the seats. So there's been a major shift in the power there. Then we have the Green Party, who got 6.5%. Independent voters only got 0.4%, but they got a seat, so they're about on par. People's Party got 1%, and then other parties got a small percent. So ultimately, gains and losses in the House. The Liberals had a majority, and now they don't. They have what's called a minority government. They lost 29 seats, and of those 29, the Conservatives gained 23. In total, the Bloc gained 22, with the NDP losing 18. The Green gained 1 seat, and then there was an independent shift to a gain of 1 as opposed to having 0 representation. So there's been a bit of a, yeah, right? So there's been a little bit of a conflict, I suppose, of people getting upset. You know, the Liberals didn't get as much of the vote as the Conservatives, but they got a lot more of the seats. And this just happens because, you know, in where the Conservatives did win, they won by a lot higher margin. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, but that's kind of the way our system currently operates. Voter reform has always been talked about in elections, but has never actually had anything done about it. So I'm just going to take a quick sec to talk about the NDP versus the Bloc, because they both had about the same, about the same representation. The Bloc having 32 seats, whereas the NDP only having 24. But the NDP have double the representation in terms of the popular vote. So what happened here is that because the Bloc Québécois only runs in Quebec, their vote wasn't diluted. So that 7% really hammered home in one province and in a whole bunch of ridings. So the Bloc, they gained back 22 seats. They used to have a really strong presence in Quebec. They lost it for a couple of years, and now all of a sudden it's back in spades. So that's what happened there. Something funny that happened, because if you've listened to me go on about Alberta politics, is that in Western Canada, there's a whole lot of conservatism, except for in British Columbia. As I said, they're stereotyped as the hippies. But right smack dab in the middle of Alberta, in Edmonton, there is a riding that is not blue. It is still orange. It is NDP, which I thought was pretty funny, because mostly in Alberta, the biggest competitor with the Conservatives is typically the Liberals. Let's see here. The Independent. So that was in Vancouver, which is in British Columbia. This was the Granville-Vancouver riding with Jody Wilson-Raybould, who beat out the Liberal candidate. Fun fact is that Jody had actually previously been a minister in the cabinet for Justin Trudeau from 2015 until early 2019, so earlier this year. And she was also Minister for Veteran Affairs of Canada from January to February, so for only about a month. And then she resigned from the Liberal Party in February. She left. There was this SNC-Lavalin controversy. I don't 100% understand what went on. I know there was a big issue. Basically, it's been asserted that Justin Trudeau attempted to influence a request for deferring a prosecution. Again, not 100% sure, but whatever. So the Liberals do not have a majority. They have what's called a minority government. Now, what this means is I'm just going to talk about the big differences between them. So in the majority, obviously, you have most of the seats. As long as everybody in your party votes party lines, can basically pass anything through the House that you want. With me so far?
Yes.
Good. Sorry, I know I'm doing a lot of talking, doing really fast, just because I know you guys we gotta wrap up shortly here. So the majority has most of the seats and requires no other parties to support them whenever they want to. No other support from other parties to pass motions through Parliament. However, the minority, they only have a relative majority of seats. So basically they just have the most amount of seats without having most of the seats in the House. So they don't have what's considered a controlling portion, and they'll rely on the support of other parties, or they'll only last a short period of time, and we'll come back to that one. So another big difference is that, in a majority, they can take that decisive action and just push things through, and away they go to make progress. However, minority governments are going to rely on a lot of compromise, which I'm okay with, because I really like the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. I would love for him to have a little more influence in the party, especially because it does look like his party holds enough seats that they could work with the Liberal government to pass more. But this means that in order to win over NDP support, the Liberal government would have to tailor their motions to work with what the NDP wants with their guiding principles. So this is not the worst case scenario, and this is actually better than I was expecting. It's not great, but it's not as bad as it could be, because we could have a guy whose greatest policy was, Justin Trudeau's a poopy face.
Yeah. And I agree with you. And that would be very weird, right? I mean, it is funny if you look, I could go back to the screen, but if you look at the different regions, like you were saying, you can actually break each of these regions out.
Oh, yeah. The CBC did a great job of that.
And the funniest thing, here's the funniest thing. There's two funny things. The funniest thing for me was Prince Edward Island is liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And that the only thing I know about that island is that Anne of Avonlea and Anne of Green Gables are both set there. Other than that, know nothing about it. It means nothing to me other than that. Right? And so and those are very conservative movies. The other one is the North. The North is liberal with one NDP candidate. There's nobody that lives in the North but Canada, but they're liberal. And in America, the North on the very high end is not liberal. When you go up to the high end of Michigan, Wisconsin, Dakotas, high end of Washington, none of that stuff. It's all red. It's not liberal. It's all conservative. Though your colors are reversed, man. Your liberals are red and your conservatives are blue.
I know. So that always throws me off whenever I'm listening to an American show and they're talking about red states and blue states, and then I have to go, wait, red state good? No, red states GOP Republican. Okay, got that. Yeah, it does confuse me, and I think it's really confusing to a lot of Americans. And I'm sorry, I didn't pick the colors; they just happened to be that way. So what can happen in the case of a minority government? They can form what's called a coalition government. So essentially, this is when the leading party, who has the relative but not the absolute majority, they have to work with other parties and can enter into an actual formal coalition to work together to pass bills based off of both parties' values. Now, what if this doesn't happen, and what if the main party or the minority government does not have the support? Well, I found a quote. It goes as such. There is just one basic requirement. The government must at all times enjoy the confidence of the majority of MPs in the House of Commons. In other words, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet can only remain the government of Canada for as long as they have support of the majority of the MPs. So essentially, they can enter into a motion of no confidence, which basically means that we can end up going back to the polls sooner than in 4 years. In less than 2 years, we can end up going back to the polls to try to re-elect. Now, how that would work, it depends on now the official opposition is the Conservative Party. They can put the motion through, as far as I understand. And then if that gets passed, then go back to the polls. Now, all depending on the political environment that we're living in, that can kind of backfire on them, I believe, just in the same way that, an impeachment could backfire if done at an inopportune moment in American politics, if I'm not mistaken. So I just got two interesting little points here, and then I think we'll just have to wrap up, and I'll bring up my next thing next time. So on the Conservative Party's website, they were fear-mongering about Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh wanting to form a coalition government, and they were doing this before the election. But 2 days after the election, Trudeau had come out and said that there's not going to be a coalition. And the last thing that I have here is just a little fun fact. So in 1974, the House of Commons passed a motion of no confidence and brought down the Liberal government at the time. And that Liberal government was led by Justin's father, Pierre Trudeau. It opened the way for a new election, which actually worked in the Liberals' favor because they went from a minority government to a majority government. So I'm betting the opposition in that case is kind of like, well, shit. But
yeah, whoops.
Whoopsies. So I will leave you guys with Canadian politics because Alberta politics is just going to send me out on rants, and we're running on limited time now.
Yeah. No, fair enough. And I do want to wrap this up. I want to point one last thing out, and this is funny. So they, at the very bottom of this article, right, they have this thing called seat count in the House of Commons, right?
Mhm.
And the first thing I think of the House of Commons, then I think of like rap songs and stuff like that. But we'll just stay here. If you go back to 2015 versus 2019,
Yep.
in 2015, it looks like there was more New Democrats.
There was.
And now they're either conservative or part of the bloc.
Yep. Yeah, Quebec is, I think, where we saw a good chunk of the shift. I just want to see if I can find that here. Yeah, in Quebec, they lost 6 Liberal seats, 14 NDP seats, but they did lose 2 Conservative seats. All of that totaled up to give the Bloc Québécois, 22 more seats in the House.
Yep. And here it looks like if you watch where it goes, they lost in New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Alberta the most. Those are the highest ones that they lost.
Seems legit. Yeah, it's interesting that the Conservatives actually looks like they lost support in Alberta in those 4 Oh, no, sorry, they gained support in those 4 years. Never mind. It's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. I don't know. So I think Canadian politics are interesting. And I think if you look at where we're at with this, and all of that, you can kind of see, I don't know, it's weird, right? You can kind of see the different aspects of society and of where we're at in our mainstream, way of thinking, and I think the big thing, here is if we do not have, all the people working together and we have too many parties, we can see a split. But in your case, in Canada, the extra options didn't actually force the split quite as much as what a lot of people want to make it out to be, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big thing here is if you have, that big split, then that's where we are. I don't know. Sorry, outro music started without me trying to make it happen.
So.
Anyway, without us looking at where we're going to be at and how we're going to handle this, if we don't understand and see how this can change things, I think a four-party system will be beneficial. But what I don't think can be beneficial is if we, do not fix some of the issues that we have internally with, where we're at. If we can't fix this, we're going to be no better than Canada, folks. We're going to be in Canada's position where we have the four groups and the Conservatives are still just taking over. So I'm glad you got 4 groups, Keith, but it didn't do you any good. It actually didn't harm you because they all just went conservative. I don't know. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us on another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. We are very excited that you joined us. This is our second live stream. I'm hoping within the next month we'll have Hannah back, and we will be able to do a live stream on YouTube and maybe Twitch or another streaming services. I don't know. But it's been an awesome experience. Thank you so much, Boyce from Mindful Skeptics, and Buddy, the new co-host that will fill in as Hannah is no longer able to join us until the end of November now. So, anyway, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week with another amazing Cellar Door Skeptics.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com. You've been listening